Greetings, old world explorers, and if you're new here, a very warm welcome to the channel. I just wanted to take this opportunity to announce a new format that I'm going to be trying out here. My intention will be to release a video weekly. I think I'm going to go for Fridays noon Pacific. And in the past, I've brought you videos on specific locations and things like that. And what I think I'll do now is just share with you some of the things I've been checking out throughout that week, maybe to spark your interest in your own research. I will still be doing conversations and live broadcasts at any given time, I suppose you could say. But for the sake of consistency, I'm going to keep it to one a week at that time. So I thank you for being here, and I hope you stick with me on this journey. This is the old reformatory in Elmira, New York. If we get a little closer, we can see where Elmira sits in the state of New York, just beneath the Finger Lakes here. Now on this channel we've covered many locations close by. We've got Scranton down here, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo. So definitely an old world hub. Let's take a closer look at this structure. I found a link on correctionhistory.org. I'll put the link in the description. I'll be reading from this as we view some of these pictures. So we're told that this thing opened in 1876. And real quick, you can see we have a streetcar down here in the corner, part of the old world transportation system. But the intention was there was a great anticipation for inmates, an increase in inmates because of the end of the American Civil War. I find that to be strange. So we are told in 1869 the New York State Legislature authorized the purchase of a 280-acre site in Elmira, and they, I guess, began construction on it sometime in between then and 1876, which is when it was supposedly open for use. So a little bit vague on the build time there, and a bit of a short window, and really this is a massive structure. And we can get a closer look at the roof in this one. And I'll just zoom in, and apparently this is what they did with the inmates. They reformed them and turned them into soldiers. You have to wonder why they would build a jailer type facility with these massive windows. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but you can see how intricate the roof work is here, and then a lot of the detail going on here. It really is quite a spectacular structure. And they say it was built to express a different type of incarceration in which the inmates are, rather than any physical discipline, were to receive psychological retraining into society. Now this building still serves as a correctional facility in Elmira, New York. And as we take a closer look at the detail on these things, you can see this part here with the windows and all the decorative elements here, and you're going to see that they chopped the building off at this point right here. And here you can see how much modification has happened from that original structure. And then you always, of course, have to ask yourself the question, why? Why do they need to scale these down? Is the prison population not getting larger? They'll tell us that there were issues with the roof and the construction process from the 1870s, but as you can see here, you can see how tight the shingle work on these roofs are. So, of course, you leave a building like this, a structure like this, up for any period of time, and people are going to start asking questions. The first superintendent of this place was this gentleman here, Zebulon Brockway. Just wanted to add it in here because I like that name, Zebulon. Apparently, despite all the issues in the early days with Elmyra, the system was sort of copied in other institutions as well. So it wasn't as effective as they thought it was going to be, but they still used it. So this is going back now again to the jails and asylums of the 1800s, and the question begs to be asked: what was actually going on back then? And were they really just really pooling all the resources and building structures like this in anticipation of all the criminals that would be around as a result of the Civil War, or is there something else going on with this story? And these are the questions we have to ask. There is a book on it, the Elmira Reformatory. I think it's available on. I'm not going to say the word. I'm not a fan of them. The auditorium. So I had an auditorium here. You can see all of these young people, and when I did the write-up, it was late teens to early 30s is what they focused on. But if you look at this, looking a lot more like the faces of adolescents and young people. So again, does that match the story? So I'm just curious, does the historical narrative make sense? Was this thing built to accommodate the growing prison population at the time, or is this a reclaimed and repurposed structure? You tell me. The Guor Fort is said to date back to the 4th century AD, located in the Madhya Pradesh region of India. And we're going to take a closer look at this storyline. And the given historical narrative for this structure is even admitting that we are not sure when this was first constructed. Some accounts begin in the 3rd century AD, some in the 6th, and then the 10th century. They're telling us for sure we have some sort of written account of this existing. And we are told that the fort is built on an outcropping of sandstone. You can see in this picture here, this is what they're telling us is the sandstone outcropping, with the fort being built on top. And even in this photo here, you can see evidence of structure. And of course, what I'm implying here is that we are looking at the remains of a structure that's somewhat intact post-cataclysm. And as we go through the area, you're going to see intricate detail that contradicts our historical narrative of what we know to be, or what we have been told to believe about the past. And this is a good depiction of the outcropping that they're telling us was the natural geology and the fort along the top. We are also told that the British take control of the fort in the mid-1800s, taking control of much of this region of the realm, much like they do in the Western world as well. So the narrative overlaid in all sorts of areas, including India. And as we can see here with the infrastructure, well, take it for what it is, I suppose. But very difficult to understand and determine what we'll call natural and what is man-made. Now, the narrative will tell us that these are carved into the cliff, and what we're seeing in the meltology field, the believers that we exist in a post-cataclysm world are suggesting that these are the remains of structure that have been turned into what we call stone, not carved, intricately carved, many decades ago, or many centuries ago, as they'll say. And the evidence of this can be found realm-wide, and here we're looking at this region of India, much of India giving us a lot of this evidence. Very difficult to conceive of why anyone would rationally want to carve in such a manner, making it look very piecemeal, not making a lot of sense. You've got some pretty spectacular infrastructure here. These deep wells. And there's what they'll call the sandstone covered in basalt, they also say. Looking more like the remains of devastation of some sort. And I know they do have, in the religious texts from that part of the world, they do have recordings of cataclysm. I think it's in the Mahabharata and the Hindu Vedas all speak of cyclical ages or eras here, and I think, of course, all of these texts have been tampered with to fit the narrative. Like I mentioned, the British were present early on in the 1800s for the resetting of the narrative, and I think a lot of these, I don't know if anything has been unscathed from the resetters of the narrative, but in these ancient texts and in our history there are, of course, seeds of truth, and I think these cataclysms were recorded in some fashion. There's a memory, collective memory, that we can tap into. This is a great example of that in-between stage here. You can't really tell what's going on with the structure here quite clearly post-cataclysm. And quite amazing. All across India I have found many hill forts that blend into mountains, and really in our modern age poverty-stricken, right, as a result of that colonial reach, stretching out the arm of colonialism, and the resetting and retelling and the diminishing of the local cultures in these regions that are taken over by the new, the dominant force, let's say. Guor Fort. This is one of the many interesting arches that can be found in the Daniel Boone National Forest. The Daniel Boone National Forest can be found right here at the southern end of Kentucky flowing into Tennessee. And if we look on the Wikipedia, they mention here getting its name in 1966, originally called Cumberland National Forest, part of the Cumberland Plateau. We take a closer look at the Cumberland Plateau. This region here in yellow is what geologists are calling the Cumberland Plateau. And in the geology portion of this Wikipedia page, we have an explanation for the sedimentary rocks in this region coming from two different ages. The Mississippian, which pinpoints the age to 358 to 323 million years ago, and the Pennsylvanian, which is looking like it's a little more recent, but still way, way, way back in the past. But if you're familiar with the work I do here on this channel, you'll know that what I think of as the conventional historical timeline and geologic timeline and biologic timeline are works of fiction coming out of the 1800s Royal Society. Deep thinkers, as they say. And I think what we're looking at here is the after effects of some form of cataclysm that took infrastructure and architecture and turned it into what we now call natural formations. And not everybody has the eye for this. And I do realize it's a bridge too far, or an arch too far, for a lot of people, but I think this is certainly worth exploring if you have the stomach for it. You have quite a few arches, as you can see here in this region. As we go through, I'll show you more, but we get a lot of the horizontal striations, which they'll say came from 300 plus million years ago, which I suggest is evidence of brick lines and buildings that have been, have succumbed to some form of damage. And I guess we're to believe that these types of formations have been intact like this all of that time. Also notice the age of the forest itself. Most of the trees being able to date back to no more than 200 years, really, which fits in with more of a cataclysm theory rather than that very, very slow burn of uniformitarianism. And of course you get, in these locations along the hiking trails, you get the explanations of how these things formed. It's almost like they need to reinforce this in your consciousness when you're taking it in at the physical level in reality. When you start to wander, your mind starts to wander and wonder how such a thing could have formed. They provide you with a visual. You get, again, very interesting formations, even in the creek beds. You get a lot of the lines. Very interesting area. Certainly encourage you to get out and check this out if you're close by. It would definitely be interesting to walk through this area. And you can see on the surfaces of a lot of the rock what look like a charring going on. But in case you start to think that way, you get these explanations again. And over time, that slow drip over time, 300 million years ago. I mean, even they admit it's all speculation. They just, the geologists are educated enough to understand it better than the layperson, is how the story goes. But I'd imagine you'd have to overlook a lot of anomalies as you're investigating this type of evidence. Again, the charring going on in this area, you can see it quite clearly. It's certainly not something that happened slowly over time, but looking like, well, you know, when you burn the edge of even cheese, things like that. I often use the sugar analogy, caramelization of sugar, but cheese does the same thing. You get these types of horizontal rock lines along the banks of the creeks and rivers in the area. Now, are we looking at grout lines here? What do you think of this research? I'm curious to know. I like to present the visual evidence I find for you. Of course, you come to your own conclusions. This is just me sharing what I think. And what I think today might be different tomorrow. I'm just going to leave it open. Named after Daniel Boone. Probably a fictional character. Possibly real. Not sure. Hard to know what to make of history itself, you know. We have all these narratives attached to these locations. And they call this one the Double Arch. And just a few more for you. Very, very interesting, anomalous geography. But I have seen similar features in places like France, along the German Germany and France border, in the Czech Republic, in other places in the States as well. You get into the Four Corners area, has a lot of this type of evidence, again with that almost looking charred, but you can see the striations, the horizontal striations. So I just wanted to share this. Let me know what you think.